All right. I want to welcome everyone to the Power of Our Story. We are a place of safety for our protectors to process the journey together with others that get it. Please don't waste your years suffering in silence. You can reach out to us on the Power of Our Story and meet our amazing community that cares about you and understands. So today we have a very special story, and I'm going to hand it over to Natalie Reilly, the living love note lady.
Hi, welcome all on this Good Friday. Judy Glasser. How do I begin? I only met Judy in person for the first time a few weeks ago. But our stories have been connected since May 18th, 2016, when her son, David, a Phoenix police officer, was killed in the line of duty. At the time, I was embarking into law enforcement as a mother of a law enforcement officer. He was beginning his career in the state of Georgia. He had just gotten out of the Navy. And as the founder of Nothing But Love Notes, as we were just getting our feet off the ground, an organization that spreads love to first responders and veterans, I was moved the day that I heard about what had happened to David. I was moved in that I wrote a bunch of love notes to the Phoenix Police Department and then began this journey toward Judy. Fast forward 3 years, and I find myself in a relationship with a man, a retired Phoenix police officer, who was on the scene the day that David was killed. And then 3 years later, here I am, sitting here. I found myself helping Judy share her story, help her publish her book, something she wanted to do, but was waiting for a sign that it was time to do it. What I realized and what Judy realized is that God was nudging us together all this time, because here we are releasing Judy's book, beautiful book. And then I looked up. This woman and this book carry a message of faith and hope when the worst happens. The worst fear a mother could possibly have, losing a child. Judy's willingness to wear her heart on her sleeve encourages me and so many others. This is a gift. It really is. It's a gift to the world that in the midst of suffering, there is hope. So with that, I give you Judy Glasser.
Thank you, Natalie. Natalie has been a blessing in my life. And writing the book was a journey. I've been a blogger for 13 years, but writing a book was so different. And Natalie was a great person to lead me through that adventure and just make it a super positive experience. And it's so cool to have it done. Have it all done. I do have some notes today just to make sure that I want to share with you pivotal moments in my journey. It's a long journey, and so I won't be covering all of it. If you want to know any more details, you have to read the book. But I'm going to share some pivotal moments that changed my journey, and also some things I learned about losing a child. That really I had no idea before how this felt. And I am probably going to cry through this because parts of this story hit pieces of my heart that are broken. But that's fine. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'll just keep going because I've cried a million tears and I'll be crying several more million along the way. But my story does start on May 18th, 2016. I was driving home from work like I had done over 33 years. I had driven home from work. And I like to start there because life is so short and we have no idea when our lives are going to blow up or something's going to happen. I had no idea that a deadly drama was happening on the west side of Phoenix. Until I got a call from my daughter-in-law, Kristen, and she was crying, and she told me Davey had been shot. And I immediately thought about his vest, and I thought, okay, we're talking about an armor leg. You know, this is okay. And I started shaking though, so I pulled the car over. And meanwhile, James Bird, who was Davey's best friend on his squad, walked into Kristen's house, found out I was on the phone. He found out where I was. I was in Central Phoenix, and he told me to go to the hospital, go straight to the hospital, go in the emergency room entrance, and give my keys to the first police officer I saw. And so I started my car up, figured out where the hospital was. I was only about a mile from the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, I was worried that I would not be able to find a police officer to give my keys to. And when I got close to the hospital, I realized that was not going to be a problem, because the hospital was surrounded by police officers with cars and the lights going. And I pulled up into the emergency room. You know, it was crowded with police officers, gave my keys to the first one I saw, and they escorted me up to a conference room. And I kept asking, when am I going to see Davey? When am I going to see Davey? And they said we needed to talk to the surgeon first. And Kristen, my daughter-in-law, and her parents were in the room. My husband got there shortly after, and the surgeon came in, and he gave us the worst news possible, that there was no hope. There was nothing they could do. Back of Davey's head had been shot off. And so there was no surgeries, nothing. And it's impossible to process news like that. So then they let us see Davey, and we took turns, and I walked in, and Davey looked like he was asleep. He was 6'5". And so he filled up the hospital bed, and his head was wrapped, and his leg was also shot. That was not important. And he looked like he was asleep. So I grabbed his hands, and they looked normal. And when I grabbed his hands, just memories flooded through my mind about Davey. And he was an awesome kid. He was such an awesome kid that we thought we were awesome parents. Do you guys have any of those kind of kids? Until my daughter came along, and she was a strong-willed little girl, and we learned we weren't that great of a parent. Davey was just one of those great kids who didn't want to get in trouble. So he was really easy to parent. He loved people. He was an extreme extrovert from when he was just a little kid. He loved sports. He started playing sports when he was just little. He played all the sports, played a lot of baseball, was pitcher and a first base. And then in high school, he moved more into basketball, and actually got a small basketball scholarship to college, because he was only 6'5". He wasn't one of the really tall dudes, but he was strong, because the coach always put him under the basket with those big guys. So he got very strong. He was always planning fun. We were always going places, doing things. He was always interested in having a good time. Everybody around him got used to saying yes to everything, because if you said no, you missed all the fun. So everybody was all interested in whatever he was doing. He had a lot of people over. He had UFC fight parties, poker parties, all kinds of stuff going on. He was an unusual combination of a man with high integrity and high loyalty and high expectations of others, but he also liked to party. He loved to have a good time. One of his favorite things was tailgating at Cardinals football games. And he had a huge group of guys that tailgated with him. Before they had kids, they would be there when the gates open and spend all day there. But when they got kids, that got moved a little bit. One of his tailgating buddies told me that he met Davey in a concession line at the Cardinal Stadium. And they started talking, and by the time they got up to order their beers, they were friends. And Davey invited him to come tailgate with them next game. And he went, and suddenly he had 40 friends. And he said Davey was the best friend he ever had. And so that was kind of how he collected friends everywhere he went. As I held his hands that night, I thought about how we had no regrets. We went, we did, we didn't wait for stuff. We traveled to Spain and London. We went to Italy for 2.5 weeks. We went and did. And we also kept short accounts. So we had nothing to apologize for. We had no bad feelings anywhere. And so we had none of that regrets. Also, the last 5.5 years of Davey's life, my husband and I lived only 1.5 miles from his family. So we were involved daily with Davey's family, helping with the kids, helping with the dogs, all of that. So that was a blessing. That night at the hospital, the police, I didn't know the police had chaplains, but our chaplain was Bob Fessmeyer, and he was unbelievable in helping us get through that night. He prayed for us. He helped us know what was really going on after the surgeons talked with us. And when the sun came up on May 19th, 2016, Davey's brainwaves were gone. And so we had to leave. And that was very hard to leave because drugs were keeping his heart pumping and the machine was keeping his lungs going, because he wanted to be an organ donor, and he was the first Phoenix police officer who had been an organ donor. So the police were all concerned about how this whole thing was going to work, along with this huge funeral they were now planning. And it was hard to leave, but there were 2 little kids who needed their mothers, and we needed to move on. And so the police escorted us through the city of Phoenix. They drove our cars, and we were in their car because it was commute time. And I remember looking out the window, just feeling like this was a foreign place. Like, I don't live here because this feels foreign. When we got home, it was very quiet because my husband's father had died 11 days before this. And we had just gotten home from his funeral. So we had several bombs going off in our life, and it was just too horrible to talk about. The next day, my living room was full of police officers because we were planning Davey's funeral. And my head was swirling because it was very chaotic. A lot of people walking in, walking out, phone calls. The police chaplain was doing a great job of taking care of everything. And the good thing is, Kristen had gone to some police funerals with Davey, so she knew he wanted everything. Like, he liked it all. So really, there wasn't a whole lot to discuss at that point. Then there was a buzz that went through the room, and Angela Harrell, who's the head of the 100 Club, came in to talk to Kristen and to give her a check for any initial financial needs she had. And I knew what the 100 Club was because Davey had talked us into getting the fallen officer plates, license plates on our car. And he had told us it supported the 100 Club. So I knew what the 100 Club was, and it was significant to me that it was kind of ironic that people had asked me before if I knew a fallen officer, because I had a fallen officer plate, and I would always say, no, we are supporting the 100 Club. But after Davey's death, we personalized our fallen officer plate. So Angela started telling her story, and her husband had been killed in the line of duty right around the time that her kids were 5 and 2, which is how old Davey's children were when he was killed. And that got my attention because I didn't know anybody who knew somebody who was killed in the line of duty. And I looked at Angela, and she was smiling. And I was not sure that I would ever smile again. And Angela looked happy, and I was not sure I would ever be happy again. And she was also doing something positive, helping people, moving forward. And a light broke through. I had been spiraling into this dark pit of despair ever since the surgeons had told us the awful news. And a light broke through this dark pit I was spiraling into, and it was hope. Suddenly, I felt something I hadn't felt for several long and dark days, is hope. Hope that there was a positive future for me. And so I'm goal-oriented. So right then I made a goal that I was going to make it to this positive future, and that me and my husband were going to make it, and that my family was going to make it to this positive future. I didn't care what it took. And looking back, I can tell you that that was a pivotal moment in my journey where I stopped spiraling down into this pit, and I took a tiny step forward and a tiny step up. That week was kind of just a blur to me. I have to look at my pictures to see what days different things happened. But on Monday, we were talking about the funeral. A bunch of us were at Davey's house, and we had to pick a song. And Ryan was there. Ryan is a police officer and Davey's friend and his neighbor. And he suggested a song called Thy Will by Hillary Scott. And none of us had heard it, so he started playing it. And about 3 or 4 words into it, I put my head down on the table and just cried. And I cried the rest of the song. And after that, I went out in the backyard, Davey's backyard. He had a acre backyard for all of our playing and great memories out there. And I started thinking about how faithful God is. And at that point, I had been reading the entire Bible for 6 years, and blogging through it. I have a blog called Journey Towards the Truth. And at that time, I had been doing that for 6 years, and I had a close relationship with God, and God talked to me a lot. And the year before that, God had challenged me to memorize the entire first chapter of James. So I had done that. Even though I have a terrible memory, I told God he was going to have to do it. And he did. And the first chapter of James starts with, "Consider it pure joy, my dear brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance." And Hillary Scott's song, Thy Will, one of the lines in it is, "I can't consider this all joy." It's hard to consider this all joy. So I knew that God was talking right to me. He was saying this knowing that I would know where that line comes from. And so I sat in the backyard that day, in Davey's backyard, thinking about God and my relationship with God for a long time. And I realized that he was my answer, that he had the strength and the wisdom and the comfort that I needed, and that he would be faithful and he would be my rock, even though the rest of my life was shaking. And so this is another pivotal moment where my journey took a big step forward and a big step up. On Thursday, it was Davey's funeral, and I didn't want to get out of bed because I should have never had to go to Davey's funeral. Davey should have gone to my funeral. But I'm goal-oriented, and I set a goal that today was about honoring Davey and everything he was. And even though my heart was broken and my life had blown up, I was going to honor Davey. And I did not understand how big of a deal and how public of a deal a police officer's funeral was. When we walked behind Davey's coffin into the church, the parking lots were just packed full of police cars. All the lights are on. The yard is packed full of police officers in formation, saluting Davey's coffin. As we walk into the church, it's packed. The church is packed. It's a huge church in Phoenix. It's packed and people are still rolling in. And I found out later there was 2 other rooms and there's over 5,000 people. And the helicopters were flying over the church. And it was just, as I sat in the front row, I felt waves of grief going over all these people. I had never felt like that before, and I realized that all of these people were grieving with us. All of Phoenix was grieving, all the law enforcement families everywhere was grieving with us, and several people spoke. They were all awesome. I don't remember a lot of the specifics because my mind was just swirling with all the stuff. One of the people who spoke was James Bird, and he was Davey's friend, best friend on his squad. And James got my attention because he said 2 things I didn't know about Davey. Is that I knew Davey had a strong faith in God, but I did not realize that Davey shared his faith a lot at work. He was constantly sharing his faith, which was awesome. And also that Davey, I knew that Davey said love you to us instead of goodbye. He would always say love you. I didn't realize that he had his whole squad. And you see the squad by Davey's coffin here, but I didn't realize that he had this group of big, tough police officers also saying love you to him and to each other before they left the precinct, before they went on a call. They all said love you. And James said that some of them thought it was crazy when Davey brought it up, but Davey was 6'5", so when he insisted on something, everybody kind of did it. And so another guy in their precinct, another police officer in their precinct told me that he used to listen to them yelling love you across their locker room, thinking how strange that was. But I can tell you, after Davey was killed, it was huge that the last thing Davey said to any of us was love you. And the last thing we had said to him was love you. And it really helped our journey. And in order to honor Davey and honor his memory, we all started doing this. We all started saying love you instead of goodbye. And it was a positive thing because that first year we saw people a lot. There was a lot of things going on and we saw each other. And every time we'd see each other, before we went, we would hug each other and say, love you. And it's hard to feel bitter. It's hard to be bitter when all these people are telling you they love you. And it's hard to be angry when everybody's hugging you and you're surrounded by love. And it's hard to feel alone when all of this love is just a constant theme in your relationships with everybody around you. And so that became a huge pivotal moment in my journey and in a bunch of our journeys, because that is Davey's legacy of love. It really helped us get on a more positive path early on. I always say I'm not an expert on grief, but I am an expert on my journey of grief. I was blogging through the Bible probably for close to the 6th year after Davey was killed. And 4 months after Davey died, I blogged about Job 14:5, which is where God tells us that our last days on earth are determined when we're born. And that really helped me when my mother died. I was very close to my mother, and it really helped me. Who am I to say that she should be here when God wanted her in heaven, and that was her day? And it really helped me when Davey was killed as well, because it took care of the what ifs. Like, what if he hadn't gone to work that day? What if he hadn't gone on that call? What if he was not a police officer? It didn't matter. That was Davey's day. And so it took care of all the what ifs. And also, Davey loved being a police officer. He would not have wanted to live or die any other way. It also helped me identify one of the driving forces behind my journey is that I'm still breathing. I'm still here. I still have a purpose. God has a purpose for me, things for me to do. So my blog about Job 14:5 went viral that weekend, which was crazy. And God was telling me that I needed to start another blog about my journey, which I did, myfamilybleedsblue.com. And I've been writing that since that time. And I get a lot of comments from people who have lost a child or somebody they were very close to, that they love it that I put words to their emotions, and it helps them not feel alone and helps them find hope. Because some of the realities of losing a child, and Holly knows these, is that Davey was supposed to be here for all my life. There was never going to be a time that Davey wasn't here. Anyway, lived large, so he had a big spot in my life. All that was ripped away. All my hopes and dreams for tomorrow were ripped away, and they were gone. A lot of people say the first year is the worst. That's not true when a child dies. Actually, the pain grows, the hole grows. I call it the pain of permanence, because it becomes permanent, that this really is going to be for the rest of my life. A friend said to me, I'm glad you have God to help you get through this. And I said, well, I'm glad I have God too, but I'm not getting through this. Like, this is not something where you do a sigh of relief and, wow, I'm glad I'm on the other side of that. It grows, it's there. Davey's not here, and that's not changing. And so it's not something you get over. And that's why when you meet parents who lost a child 20 years ago, they will get tears in their eyes, because you don't get through it. You don't get over it. One thing that helped us is we started the Judy Glasser Foundation. I didn't. Kristen did with some friends. And I didn't realize how helpful that was to do something in Davey's name. We create opportunities for police officers to have positive interactions with kids and people in their communities, because we think that people don't know, don't have positive reactions or any positive connections with police officers in a lot of these communities. It's always a negative thing. Somebody's going to jail, somebody's in trouble. And we really think that possibly if this young man who killed Davey had had some positive interactions, he may have made a different decision that day. So what this does, and I know parents who do 5Ks or bike rides or give out scholarships, and it all helps because it helps redeem some of what is lost. And so I suggest that to parents who feel like things are undone, it ended so abruptly, do something positive in their name. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. I don't know if you have any questions or comments. your thing is not on, Natalie.
Thank you, Judy, for sharing. Amazing message. So you recently just finished your book. What has that done for you in this journey?
I have blogged about Davey's death for almost 7 years now, but I didn't blog a lot about that first week, because I blogged a little bit about this pivotal, decisions, but not all the stuff in between. And that was a cleansing thing for me, to just write it all out. A blog is like ideas or thoughts. And to write the whole story was hard, excruciatingly hard, but it was cleansing. It was another step in my journey. I don't use the word healing. You're not going to hear me or healing, because like my heart is broken, and it's still broken, and it's going to be broken. I figured that out the last 7 years. And so healing kind of sounds to me like it goes away, and that's not how it is with the death of a child.
Are there any questions out there? Comments?
Well, I'll comment while everybody. Oh, Holly, you go ahead. I want you to go.
I just want to thank you, Judy, for sharing this with us, your journey. As you can imagine, my heart it resonated deep, very deep. And I agree 100% with your perspective on journey versus healing, and getting through that pain doesn't get easier. I don't need to tell you any of this, but
Right.
just to agree with you and let you know, I share that, and I share that with others too, that it doesn't get easier. It's become familiar.
Yeah.
As you said, it's there now. It's part of my life for the rest of my life. And I too have found ways like you, different, but ways that have brought meaning and purpose. And I love that you shared that verse from Job, because that is exactly one of my pieces to my story. That it took me years, though, to in my journey and my experiences, but when it hit me, it was the most amazing feeling of blessing and comfort, that Danny was destined. My Danny was destined from the moment he was conceived. October 5th of 2010 was the day he was going to go home. And you're right, it takes away all that. And I never even had that, but it was like, now I know why I didn't have those what ifs. I never had that. I never had any anger toward the man who had to, there was somebody, we don't know who it was, but it wasn't because I didn't know who it was. I didn't have anger that he had died, because that was his journey. That was his destiny. And boy,
it helps.
It is such a gift to know that, and to be able to share that with other parents, to help them go, whoa, and I don't like that as a human mom. My human mother's heart is like, what? That doesn't feel quite right, but somehow. And what I shared recently with Sarah is that because of that, I can tell people, and I'm scared to say it. I'll be honest with you. This is one of my beautiful scars that I need to trust will be healing for others, but I haven't said it out loud in a group setting before this moment, is that, and it's been years since I could say it, though, to my family and friends, it is well with my soul. And it's frightening to say to a group of people that I'm like, they might go, oh my goodness, that woman must not have loved her son very much. That's the fear that brings to my, my human head and human mother's heart, that if I say that, people would think I didn't love Danny with all my heart, that I wouldn't have died for him in a heart, less than a heartbeat. But all that's true. At the same time, it is well with my soul. And
Right.
I got a message from you. So thank you so much for the courage to share your story. And I will never forget you and your story and Davey. And I can't wait to read your book and to promote it to others.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of more details in the book.
Janet?
I want to say thank you very much for sharing. I've sort of been following on LinkedIn, you and Natalie, and the stories about your journey on doing the book. During that time, we lost 2 officers here in Edmonton. And I didn't know them personally, but I know one of the officers that worked with him, and I also know the mother of the officer that worked with him. So by you sharing here today, like I say, I don't know the mother personally, but I want to get the book and give it to the mother of the officer I know, because they know the family. Her son grew up with him before they went in the police force. And so a question that I have, is it too soon?
I don't think so. I think Natalie, when we talked about making a book, writing a book, because I was blogging and I said, so what's the benefit of the book? Is you can read a book at the speed you want to read it. And at the time you're ready to read it. And I have run into people who say, I can't read it yet. Like I'm not in a good spot. And so I think people know that, whether they're ready or not. And I think it's great to get it into their house because we're all different. We all grieve different. And I have a friend who just lost her granddaughter last week, and she asked me for a book because she thinks her daughter-in-law, it would really help her daughter-in-law with the loss. And so I don't know. What do you think, Natalie? Is there too early?
I don't think so. I think sometimes we don't always know what to say in these situations. So if it were me, I would give it to someone with the disclaimer, whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
This is for you. It's almost like a friend that you can talk to when you're ready, and then they can, but just so that they have it and they know that it's there.
On a dark night, they'll pick it up. One of my favorite things is that you can give this. See, because I become kind of the resident grief person because I'm vocal and I talk about it. And so people walk up to me and tell me their tragedies, and I feel helpless because these issues are not 5-minute issues. They're not 30-minute discussions. This is a years of process, But I love it now that I can say, you need to get my book. Because then you can take it at your speed, and it's bigger, it's more background, it's more of the journey. And I just love it that I have something to say now that is a real positive thing.
Thanks. I do agree with you. Like I've bought books and haven't read them. All of a sudden they show up again and I read them. So thank you for that. And I just want to address Holly, what you said, I think if I've got it right, I'm well in my heart. Like I can't remember whether I got that quite right.
It is well with my soul.
Well with my soul. Do you know what? I think when you say that, personally, I do not think there'd be any judgment. I think that would be giving permission for someone to get to that place. So thank you both.
Thank you, Janet. Sarah?
Oh my goodness. That was so powerful, Judy. That was so beautifully shared. I very curious, just one question, Angela, the officer, the wife, you said that you got hope from just seeing her face, that she was smiling. That when was that? Just when everybody was
That was the day after we got home from the hospital. So when I talked about Davey's brainwaves leaving, that was the 19th, and this was the 20th.
okay, so even that soon, seeing her face showed you that there still can be hope for the living, for the
It's
mother,
possible.
for the,
Yeah.
it is possible. It gave you hope. I just thought your story is so, the way that you shared it, your hope, it was so beautifully shared. And it really, I feel like it's equipped me even more to help others who could be in this position. I mean, definitely to share your book. And also, you know, Holly too, I agree with Janet. I mean, it is well with my soul. That's such a powerful saying. And I think that adds hope to the situation too, that a mother's heart can get to that place. I loved how you shared that to do something in your son's name and Davey's name. You know, again, I appreciate how you shared your thought process, because it helps people to connect, to relate, and to also keep going to that place of hope. And I love that you shared about Job, that how deeply that hits you and Holly. I mean, to remember that, to know that it was written before we were born, of when our day is up. And I can imagine how comforting that would be, that there's no what ifs anymore.
Yeah.
And
Gets rid of the what ifs. I think
yeah,
it's great that you mentioned that. It was 2 days. It was actually a day after Davey died officially that I saw Angela and started thinking about hope. So I don't think there's too early to talk about there is hope. You know, there is
yes.
a better future. I didn't need to stay in this pit that I had swirled into.
You know, it's and when you can grab onto something like that early in the process, it can really protect you from that wiring that goes to post-traumatic stress. And it's, you know, so I'm hearing that also as just even seeing her face,
Yeah,
another added layer of protection for your heart to um be the best you can on this journey, you know.
right, right.
Like you said, I think yeah, very powerful sharing, and I thank you so much. This is a gift to all of us.
Thank you for the opportunity, because, you know, that's what the idea is, and that's what the book is about, is sharing this story. And God has been a huge part of my story. Without him, it would have been a way different. And he told me that my journey was going to be different because I was close to him.
And that's the importance of faith in this story. You had told me how, and it's in the book, how you had gone to police week the following year after David
Yeah.
was killed, and you were in a room full of mothers of fallen officers, and how negative, and how the energy was just so negative, and they were focused on all the wrong things, like suing the city and doing things that were more destructive to themselves than just looking for that hope.
Yeah, I was in that room, and we were supposed to be sharing our stories, and the first mother started, and it was so negative. I felt like I was getting thrown up on. She was so angry and so bitter, and they're talking about who to sue, and oh, you're suing the wrong people. You need to sue other people. And I was getting ready to leave. And then the next mother starts, and she starts in, and I just like, I don't need this negativity. And I was getting ready to leave, and God spoke to me and said, you need to tell your story in this room. It gives your pain purpose, you know? So I sat through the rest of them, And then I told a short version of my story, talking about how God was my rock while everything else blew up. And Davey's legacy of love was already really evident, how that had changed. And a fresh breath of hope came into the room. But I really saw how different my journey was from a lot of the mothers that day. I didn't really realize how different it was until that day.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that piece too, and your experience in that room, because as a Gold Star mother, I have encountered very similar groups, and it's heart-wrenching to see people so sad, so resentful, so angry and suffering. I mean, our pain will never go away, and it doesn't get easier, and blah blah, all of that, but to be stuck in such agonizing suffering breaks my heart. And so you've given me a really good message for my times. I've kind of pulled away from a lot of that, and maybe I need to step back into it and start sharing more of my journey with these other moms and dads that I have found.
Give them a possibility. Yeah, that's what God had me do that day. And I also made a new goal that day of not to get stuck, because there's those steps of grief that we all go through, and I went through them all. What I didn't do is get stuck in the negative ones of bitter and anger. I didn't get stuck there, but these women were very stuck there, making really bad decisions too in that time, to the point where several of them had no contact anymore with their grandchildren of their son, because of things they had said and done in this anger and this bitterness. So their lives were getting worse. And you think it can't get worse? It can get worse.
Thank you, Judy. And I'm going to post this up here. Let's see.
That's the day Davey was born. A long time ago.
And that's the book. Then I looked up, it's available on Amazon. We just got it up in Kindle as well. And I'm trying to talk her into an audiobook, so we'll get there too. But are there any more questions?
Sarah's got her hand up.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop on that, Judy, about the bitterness. There is a saying, I think it's Richard Rohr, who said that if we don't deal with our trauma, we are bound to transmit it. And it's really heartbreaking to see that when somebody doesn't understand where they are, and that they are so angry and bitter with a trauma that that they transmit it. They cut other people that didn't cut them. Or it's understanding, you can understand that as a human, the pain and how it can go that way, but how having the insight of how important it is to figure out what to do with that before making these decisions that you were talking about, Judy. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because there is a way to have that insight that, no, I don't want to transmit this trauma. I want to learn how to deal with it the best way I can. It's messy. Of course it's messy. Nobody's going to do it perfectly. But again, I think your voice and Holly's voice gives that direction and help in navigating forward in the worst scenario. So
yeah, I call it dealing with it without dwelling on it, like figuring out how to deal with my emotions and process my emotions and process my grief, but not getting stuck in it. And it's quite a journey. It continues, because when you lose a child, you keep losing. You keep losing because they were supposed to be here now. Davey's supposed to be here now, and he isn't. And so you just keep losing stuff. Every year you lose more. So you really have to, I had to come up with a process. I call it resilience, figuring out how to deal with bad things that happen in my life, because bad things continue to happen, right? It's not a question of if bad things are going to happen, it's when they're going to happen. And so I developed a process of filtering things through truths that I know about God, and has really helped me deal with the continual loss of Davey and also all the other bad stuff that happens.
Great. Any more questions or thoughts for Judy? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for taking the time out of your day to share and take part in this conversation. It's an important one. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.